Okay, let's get right into it. In the very early hours of January 3, 2026, an operation went down in Venezuela that completely blurred the lines between a police action and a full-blown act of war. And what happened in those crucial hours has left the entire world grappling with some really tough questions.
So that's the big question, isn't it? Was this an act of war, or was it just the most massive police raid in history? To even start to get our heads around that, we have to rewind and look at exactly how this all unfolded on the ground.
All right, our story kicks off in the dead of night, right over the capital of Venezuela.
Imagine this. It's 1:10 in the morning local time. According to reports from channels like Mark Vidal, the skies above Caracas suddenly fill with the roar of U.S. helicopters. The operation was on.
And listen, this was no simple smash and grab. This was a perfectly choreographed military operation. We're talking elite forces hitting key military targets with surgical precision, taking out Venezuela's ability to even fight back. All while, get this, a massive U.S. naval fleet with over 10,000 Marines was sitting right there in the Caribbean, just waiting.
So what was the result of all this overwhelming force? Zero. A big fat zero. That's how many Venezuelan fighter jets scrambled. That's how many anti-aircraft batteries fired a single shot. The resistance was, for all intents and purposes, non-existent. Which leads to the real question. How in the world did the U.S. justify an action of this scale? Well, the answer lies in some very, very careful wording. You see, the White House created this brilliant legal framework to make sure this was framed as anything but a war. Here's the key. From the perspective of the United States, they weren't capturing a head of state. No, they were simply arresting a fugitive, a wanted man with a federal indictment. And that subtle change in vocabulary, it has absolutely massive legal consequences.
And this right here is where you see the genius of the strategy. If you want to declare war, you have to get approval from Congress. That's a long, messy public debate. But if you frame it as a law enforcement action to serve a federal warrant, well, that bypasses Congress completely and allows you to move with incredible speed and total secrecy.
So you have this simple three-step playbook. First, you indict the target in a U.S. court. Second, you classify the mission as a law and order issue. And third, you execute the mission using the full might of the military as your enforcement arm. But just as the world was trying to wrap its head around this official story, a completely different explanation came out, and it came from the president himself.
In a press conference that frankly stunned a lot of people and was covered everywhere by outlets like the Mexican Family Channel, President Trump offered a much more direct reason for the whole thing.
And boom, just like that, the entire narrative changed. All that careful legal justification about fighting a narco-terrorist, it just got tossed out the window. It was replaced by a crystal-clear economic motive: getting control of Venezuela's oil. He didn't stop there either. He went on to say that the United States would essentially be running Venezuela until, quote, a safe transition could happen. And that meant making sure American companies would be the ones managing the country's oil wealth, which happens to be the largest proven reserves on the planet. As you can imagine, the rest of the world had some strong opinions about that. The global reaction was instant, and it was sharp. Lines were drawn immediately, with some countries fiercely condemning the action, and others, well, celebrating it. You pretty much saw what you'd expect. Traditional U.S. adversaries like China and Russia and Venezuela's regional allies, they all came out with harsh condemnations. But on the other side, you had allies like Argentina cheering the move on. What's really interesting, though, is the United Nations, which gave this very careful, very muted response, just saying they had concern. But here's the thing. This isn't just about one operation in one country. For a lot of analysts, what this really signals is the aggressive return of a 200-year-old and very controversial American foreign policy. We're talking about the Monroe Doctrine. It goes all the way back to 1823, and it basically declared the Americas as the United States' backyard, its own sphere of influence, off-limits to everyone else. For decades, it was kind of a background hum in foreign policy. But as President Trump himself made perfectly clear, his administration brought it roaring back to the forefront. Some analysts have even started calling his version the Monroe Doctrine, a much more personal, assertive claim of U.S. dominance over the entire hemisphere. And that brings us right back to our central question. When military power can be disguised as a police action, and when the real motivation is openly about controlling another country's resources, what does the idea of national sovereignty even mean anymore? The events in Venezuela have left us all with a huge, provocative question that has no easy answers.